Okay.
Hi, Halton here, and welcome to the National Firemen's Journal podcast. And today I'm really just thrilled to have my good friend, Dr. Denis O'Neil, former superintendent of the National Fire Academy, deputy director of the U.S. Fire Administration, but most importantly, a solid Jersey City firefighter. He was always a damn good firefighter, and that's probably his proudest title. And I've always wanted to have the doc on because I've had a question that's been, and I needed someone with his credentials, with his education, his training, because I've always wondered if you were on a plane and the pilot died, who would you rather have riding with you to help you try to land it? Curly Joe or Shemp? And only Dr. O'Neil would be able to unravel the great mystery.
We've watched too much Saturday morning television, Bobby, when we were
Dennis,
kids.
right? Curly Joe. Half the guys are going, "What the hell's Curly Joe?" But there were three of that
Three
character.
Stooges.
It
Yes,
was
sir.
Curly Joe, Shemp, and then who was the other guy?
Larry.
No, that was Mo, Larry, Curly. But there
Right.
were three Curlys.
Oh, okay.
It was Curly Joe, Shemp, and then there was a third guy who I can't think of right now.
No.
But I've had like major arguments with really like famous people, about things like
Important.
honestly though, people laugh, but the brothers who did that, the Howards and the Fines, Mo Howard and Larry Fine, they were brilliant men.
Yeah.
They were absolutely brilliant men, and they made a satirical kind of Gulliver's Travels almost quality film about Hitler during the war, which if you ever have the chance to see it, it's spellbinding. It's so deep. It's so amazing. Much like Chaplin. Chaplin did a wonderful anti-Hitler deal, and it's so interesting because, and I'm glad you're on because I want to talk to you a little bit about where we've been in the history of the fire service and our favorite subject, us, and just kidding. But I think for someone like yourself, honestly, obviously you got yourself a PhD while you were in the fire service before you even were the superintendent of the National Fire Academy, right?
Yes.
While you were still in Jersey City.
I was deputy when I finally made it.
Right, but you've always valued education. You've always valued ancient wisdom, and I love Talib says ancient wisdom is the only wisdom that matters, because in order to be wisdom, it has to be ancient. Like wisdom can't be something somebody came up with yesterday. That's just that's just faddish or conjecture. But so anyway, I want to get your take on a lot of things. Where we are today, where we're going. The National Fire Academy, which was an amazing experience for you. There's only one superintendent, and God bless Eric. Eric's our new guy.
Yeah.
I don't think we could have landed a better fella, for the job.
They did a great job picking him.
Eric and I have worked together with the North American Training Directors for years.
Yep.
And always a pleasure to work with Eric.
And he's a fellow New Jersey American. I don't know if you know that. Yes, he is.
So I did have part-time residents because during the summers I spent them at Halton Hardware in Fort Lee. So I was
we're all that New York metropolitan area.
I summered in Jersey. Yeah, working in my uncle's hardware store. I summered.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, right. So Eric's in there now. So I just want to, I think that the fire service is in a pretty good place right now. And you and I came in about the same time. We're pretty close in age. You got a few years on me. Obviously, that's why your hair is so gray and mine is still.
You got that little dark patch up in the top right.
It's like a little spot right there somewhere, just hanging in there. It's actually shoe polish. So I just want to get your take on a lot of stuff, and just have a chance to have a conversation about everything. And I think that there's a couple of different fields where you and I have always paid a lot of attention. Obviously, operations, because that's our first love, but also education, and then I think, in a broader sense, almost the ethical, philosophical nature of what we do. And I think that all three of them are inexorably tied, because if you don't understand ethics and training, you can't do operations. If you don't understand operations and ethics, you can't do training. And if you don't understand ethics and operations, then this, they're all tied together in my mind, and
Yep.
and they're broad. They're really broad, but I think that all of them are in a constant state of evolution. Oh, I wouldn't say change. People say, "Oh, you resist change." Well, everybody resists change because change is generally at the point of a gun. You're either change or you're fired. You change or you're going to jail.
Yeah.
You change or that's change. But evolution is okay. You learned something new, or we discovered something, or evolution, innovation kind of go hand in hand. I mean, I think as
Mhm.
people innovate more, we evolve our tactics, our theory. But what I think stays the same, Doc, and what I think that you'd agree on, and I think there's some basic fundamental constructs there, are our principles. And you were a paragon of those principles, those virtues, because all principles are virtues in practice. I mean,
Okay.
whether it's thrift, whether it's integrity, whether it's honesty, whether it's courage, those are the virtues. But principles are virtues, I think, in physical demonstration, in practice. And you did that because you made a lot of tough decisions. I mean, I watched your career, and it was never easy. Whether it was in Jersey City, because we kind of knew each other back then from
We did.
all the crazy stuff going on, and then when you got to the National Fire Academy, I was I was one of the first to give you a hard time. And back then we actually had to wait to see one another or make a phone call. You know,
Yeah,
and that was before message machines, so you couldn't
it
even
was.
message. All you got was the no answer or a busy signal.
Mm.
There was no, this is the
I
O'Neil
think you.
residence.
I don't think we're that old. Do you, Bobby? I think we had answering machines in those days.
No, Dan, we didn't have answering machines. I think we're like late 80s, mid 80s.
Really? Okay. All right.
Yeah. Because when did you take over the fire academy?
95.
95.
Yeah.
So we may have had answering machines then.
Yeah.
We did.
And I always return your call.
Yes, you did. You are one of the few friends of mine who still sends me handwritten notes.
Well, things are important. Some things are important, Bobby.
So what things are important, Doc, in your mind when it comes to our industry and how we treat one another and the community?
There's a couple of things, Bobby, that I've always found, and coming from the New York metropolitan area, as we both did, um, we had the benefit of growing up with and having to negotiate and having to get along with all different kinds of people from all different walks of life, from the very rich to the scrappy poor, all races, all creeds, all colors, all churches. When I was growing up, I lived on a street in Jersey City called Bayview Avenue, and if you walked about 6 blocks down Bayview Avenue, you hit the Statue of Liberty. And when I was a kid, my mother would have killed me, of course, but we used to swim in the Hudson River down there, and not too far away was Ellis Island. And when the people were getting off the Ellis Island at that time, one of the derogatory remarks in the neighborhood was that they were a DP, a displaced person. And these were immigrants coming over from Europe who had suffered terribly, terribly during World War II. And, we had Greek families and Jewish families and French war brides and all up and down my block. I mean, it was just, that's the way it is. And believe it or not, Jersey City is still that way. And where you grew up, Bobby, was the same. So I think that we're blessed in that we had the opportunity through grammar school and high school, and if you went to college in the city, to work with all different groups of people and have to get along. So that's the one benefit. The other is that I always found it was much easier to be 100% ethical, or however you want to capture that, than 99% ethical, because if you were 99% ethical, you had to make a decision every time you were faced with it. But if you were 100% ethical, you really didn't have to make a decision because it was already made for you. And as you go through the ranks, lieutenant, captain, battalion, deputy, chief, superintendent, deputy United States, there were there are temptations along the way, and I'll just leave it at that. And you don't have to go too far in the newspaper every day. You probably don't have to pass page 3 to see who succumbs to those kinds of things. And it's not something that accrues to you overnight. It's something that you try to earn every day, the respect of people. The third thing, of course, is what I just mentioned, the respect of people. And if you do any research, and I know you have, but maybe some of the people listening haven't, when you look at some of the things, and I'm not making any judgments about what we see on the news, but if you see people rebelling and doing, it's principally the foundation is that they've been publicly embarrassed. And whether it's getting pulled over by a police officer, whether it's been giving a summons to someone who has a fire violation, or simply maybe, which is the ultimate management sin, publicly dressing down somebody, you don't recover from that.
What the kids call being disrespected.
I'm probably not up on what kids are saying today. I'm almost afraid to ask what.
Oh, you're killing me. Oh, God. But you're right. When someone loses their dignity, and they're fighting for their dignity, that's a big deal.
Yeah.
I was, like you, Irish Catholic kid, tough neighborhood. We called it Irish welfare, cops, firefighters, and priests. That was the career pattern.
I have a story I got to tell. Go ahead.
But that's my whole family history.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, you'll be proud of me. The Smiths, which is my paternal grandmother, is from Cavan, Ireland, and Cavan is at anniversary is on the 26th. It's Cavan Day, and I'm doing a presentation to all my ancestors in Cavan County.
Really?
They asked me to. Yeah, they asked me to participate. And they said, the guy said, "You're a famous firefighter." I said, "Famous is probably pushing it. Infamous, supposed, maybe." But
my family is from the 2 adjoining counties, Monaghan and Armagh. So Monaghan is off to the east, and Armagh is to the north of Cavan.
The other side is Byrne. That's my mom. And so they were County Cork, and then my dad's side, Halton, had been here forever, and then my other grandmother was a Plunkett, and they had been here forever. I mean, she was a Mayflower Plunkett.
Really?
And, oh yeah. And so the big joke in the family always was, not only did we come over on the boat, the other half of the family met it and tied it up. So that's a true family joke. We've been here that long, and other than my paternal grandmother. So anyway, I agree with you. I think that people's dignity, I think that's the number one principle in the fire service, is protecting human dignity. You know what I mean? But to the point of the Irish welfare, one of my uncles, God bless his soul, once said to me, he says, "Bobby, remember, what you do now, after a job, you go in and you get this underwear out of the drawer and you bring it out for people." And I'm like, okay, you want to elaborate on why I should get people's underwear out of their homes after a fire? And he goes, "Listen, son, it's all about a man's dignity. You can go through a day with the same shirt or 2 or 3, same pair of slacks, 2 or 3, but a man needs clean underwear for his dignity."
Yeah.
And he was right.
Yeah.
To him, that was really important. And he would do that. He was not in the least bit kidding around. And when you think about it, that is about someone's dignity. You know what I mean?
Sure it is.
And in our neighborhoods that we grew up in, and a lot of the neighborhoods where men and women are listening to us today, the mom and dads, if they lose their home, they're going to buy stuff for the kids. They're going to buy stuff for any of the in-laws they may be taking care of or whatever. But the last person they're going to buy anything for is themselves.
Yeah.
and especially something like underwear that they could just maybe slough off. So anything you can save like that, to folks like us who are lucky and blessed and are living the way we are now, it's great. But you and I
Yeah.
both grew up in neighborhoods that weren't great, and when somebody in my neighborhood had a fire, they lost everything.
Yeah. Yeah. And so we'll get off the Irish thing after this one sentence, and that was in a Catholic school when I'm sure you had this same experience where the nuns told you that if you really worked hard, you could become president of the United States. But if you applied yourself and really worked hard, you could get a good job like a cop, a fireman, or a teacher.
Anybody can be president
So
of the United States.
anybody could be
Not
president.
everybody can be a firefighter.
Got to get that civil service job, you
That's
know.
exactly right. So, Dennis, where do you see the fire service today? I mean, I think our role, obviously, during our careers, you and I, we took on hazmat, we took on EMS,
Mhm.
we took on technical rescue, we've taken on national disaster response.
Yeah.
We've refined the incident command system, in such an incredible way that it's really been adopted by agencies. And Manning, the fellow who first brought it over to the wildland community, God bless his soul, he was a military guy. So he basically took a quasi-military model and made it pliable. A great Dr. O'Neil story. So I'm sitting there incognito at the National Fire Academy trying to blend in a class called Incident Command Response to High Rise and Major Emergencies. And I'm trying to just lay low. And one of my instructors had just gone on a 5-minute rant about how we're not doing any of that Brunacini fire ground command stuff in here. This is going to be a real command class, and so I don't, he didn't want to hear any of that stuff, and he was, this is about true ICS and blah blah blah. So every class, if you went to the National Fire Academy, well, the doc was the superintendent. He would pop in and say hi to the whole class, and the doc and I had been friends before, so Doc Dennis pops in, looks over, sees me sitting down there in the third row with my head down. Hey, Bobby, how you doing? How's Chief Brunacini and everything in Phoenix? My cover was blown. My cover was blown. The instructor looked at me like, you little bum, you didn't, what's this Albuquerque next to your, like I was undercover. I think I got a C. But I think, so we've seen this incredible growth, and I think it's good because our grandpas, when they were on the job, threw guys over the barrel. On your side of the river it was along Bayonne. On my side it was on the East Side River, and good air out, bad air in. They were doing CPR.
Yeah.
Great grandfather was once quoted as saying, "There's no reason for a man to go into a burning building than to save another man." And they meant man collectively, a person. You know what I mean? And so, and I really think that some of that ancient wisdom still applies. You know what I mean? Although we can do things a lot more aggressively now. And you and I saw the whole thing. I mean, we saw, we were wearing 3/4 boots and long coats, and now, we're Darth Vader. I mean, and that's a good thing. I mean, I think it's a really good, it's a great thing. We learned about, cancer, nanoparticulates, and mental health, and all of this has been on, your watch at the National Fire Academy and Jersey City, and mine, in New York as a volunteer, and Albuquerque, and now with fire engineering. And I don't think that it's really appreciated by many how far and how fast we've come. You know what I mean?
Well, I think if you look at the history of mankind, we don't realize how far and fast we've come. And but all of it probably goes back to, I know you love philosophy, Bobby, and I know you read it a lot, but it goes back to Plato and in his book, The Republic, when he talks about the allegory of the caves, when, the Reader's Digest version of that is there's a society of people chained to a wall in a cave, there's a fire behind them, and there's a wall in front of them, and all they see in front of them is shadows of things going by, and that's their reality. Finally, one of the people breaks free of the chains. They walk outside the cave, and of course, it's sunlight, and their eyes have a tough time adjusting. and they can't see, they're feeling around, and everybody in the cave is going, he's blind. He went outside the cave. And when his eyes finally adjust to the sunlight, he realizes that the inside of the cave is not reality. The reality is outside, and there's trees, and there's lakes and rivers and grass and sky and clouds and animals and other human beings. And he walks back into the cave, and of course the cave is dark, and he can't adjust his sight again. And he's feeling around, and everybody's going, see, he went outside the cave. He's blind. And he's going, no, no, this isn't reality. Out there is reality. And everybody in the cave is saying, no, no, this is our reality. We're going to stay here. So when you leave Jersey City, when you leave Albuquerque, when you leave Phoenix, when you leave Los Angeles, and you leave Chicago, you're getting out of the cave. The problem is when you go back to the cave, everybody in Jersey City or Chicago and Albuquerque is saying, no, 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 that's not the way we do it here. But more and more, because of magazines like Fire Engineering and the textbooks that you publish and the shows that you produce and the National Fire Academy and the state fire training systems, people are getting out of the cave. They're being exposed to new ideas. They're being taught new ways of doing things. They're looking at military models for incident command system like you just mentioned. And that's why we're improving. We're getting outside the cave. But, I can still imagine what it must have been like. Truth be told, I never got a pint of water out of a pumper in my life. I spent 15 years on a ladder company as a firefighter, a lieutenant, and a captain. Honest, that's the true story.
So after all these years, you're finally confessing that you never actually got a fire, you just went to them?
Easy now. Who do you think rescued the people?
Oh, gosh. Oh, my goodness.
Yeah.
You were just a firefighter's helper.
Here it goes. You control this thing, you can edit. Oh, anyway, so 15 years as a firefighter, lieutenant, and captain, and so
I think though, Plato was right, and Plato was an interesting guy. You got to remember, Plato also thought that a benevolent dictator was the best form of government. Problem is finding that benevolence, right?
Yeah, there's a degree there.
I'm always reminded of the Woody Allen movie. Remember Bananas at the end?
Yeah, oh yeah.
Benevolent guy who suddenly, and everyone's going to wear their underwear on the outside, so we'll know it's clean. Tell off my Uncle George. So,
are you sure that wasn't Monty Python?
No, it was
okay.
Woody Allen's Bananas.
Okay.
And it's Enrico. At the end, they help Enrico overtake the government because they shoot the nose. Remember, he's got the nose. He throws it under a steamroller. It's just Woody Allen had some great stuff.
New York,
yeah. He once said something I thought was very pithy. He said 90% of success in life is just showing up.
Yeah.
Accepting
it is.
Challenge. Because, and I think the fire service understands that. I mean, I think we show up. And I read an interesting thing. People, my buddy John Salka's head's going to explode when I say this, but I was reading Pericles this morning, and Pericles once said that, how do you put it? Friendship is won by doing favors, not by accepting them. Or how do you put it? Friends are won by doing favors, not by accepting them. And I thought it was an interesting way to look at it, that our industry is about doing favors. But I would think that if I could have 5 minutes with Pericles, which would be amazing, like his funeral oration is probably one of the most important documents ever written. If you haven't read that and you're listening to this, just Google it. It's free. It's online. But it's the wisdom and the depth of understanding of human nature and in it is phenomenal. And Thucydides actually wrote it. It's Pericles' oration as recorded by Thucydides. Pericles, as a general and a statesman, really didn't write much, but much was recorded of what he said and did. But I would tell him that I think there's certain people like us that gain maybe more than can be measured when we do favors for others.
We give.
Yeah. I mean, I think the best things I ever the great American philosopher Machete, who's also known as Danny Trejo, the actor.
Mhm.
He was in a car. There was a car accident in front of a taco restaurant that he owned in L.A. recently. It's a true story. He ran out. He helped the family, and he's in his late 70s. And someone said, "Boy, that was pretty dangerous what you did. You know, the car was still running, and it was an active emergency. And he had help from another bystander. But he said the best things in life happened to me when I did things for other people."
Undoubtedly. And we have a career of doing that,
Yeah,
all of us.
yeah, yeah. And I think in some ways that's what life is really about. I mean, for all of us, all the time. I mean,
Mhm.
when you do something for yourself, okay, that's great. When you do something for somebody else, yeah, it is great.
Yeah, it's a good feeling.
Yeah, it makes them feel good. It makes you feel good, and and especially when you do it with the hopes of nothing in return. You know,
Well, what are they going to do for you? Really.
right? I mean, it's especially people like us. I mean, maybe give us a little extra oatmeal in the morning, or have the lady who turns down the beds let us go to bed
Mm.
a little early here at the home.
Oh,
So, from your perch, I got two questions.
sure.
What was the most significant thing that the fire service accomplished during your tenure? And what do you think is the biggest opportunity ahead for the fire service?
For me, the biggest thing was establishing a system of professional development for the fire and emergency services. When I came to Emmitsburg, it was all over the place. It was a loose as a barrel of Achilles. There were very few standards in the NFPA that were applied to every fire department. There were no, a fire degree could be anything. The employers didn't know what a fire degree meant. The firefighters didn't know what a fire degree meant. And the men and women at the National Fire Academy decided that this was something that we were going to tackle. And if we looked at the models of all of the professions from medicine, law, nursing, engineering, teaching, accounting, they all had the same four basic tenets. There's an element of education, which is what you know. There is an element of training, which is what you do. There's an element of continuing education, which is remaining current. And there's an element of experience, which is taking what you know and can do and applying it to new problems or existing problems. So if you take medicine, you go to 4 years of medical school and you do a residency, you do an internship. If you go to become a teacher, you do your 4 years, but you still have to go out and do your teaching practicum. If you're an accountant, you still have to do 2 years of public accounting before you can sit for your CPA. And of course, if you graduate law school, you can't just go practice law, you got to pass the bar. So all professions had those four elements: education, training, experience, and continuing education. The National Fire Academy, when I was there, we established the 4-year degrees, the 2-year degree, the 4-year degree, and the graduate degrees were all now standard curriculum. There's about 117, 120 different degree programs, but they all follow the same curriculum.
And
So now we know the
FESHI.
FESHI, Fire and Emergency Services, Higher Education. All the book publishers follow the FESHI model for the curriculum development, so it's easy for the book publishers to do that.
I remember 15 years ago when I got the seat here at Fire Engineering, Ed Kaplan called me up, and I'd been working with Ed on the whole
Yeah.
FESHI thing, and he said, "Now we got a guy on the inside."
So the other thing is what I talked about is Plato and getting out of the cave. We're seeing now more men and women moving into leadership positions around the country. So it's not only vertical progression through the ranks, but it's also now horizontal organizationally across the country. So you take a guy like Dr. Niles Ford, he was the chief in Lincoln, Nebraska, and now he's the chief in Baltimore City. You take Rodney Slaughter, who's down in Atlanta. He came up through the ranks. You take Joel Baker, went up through the ranks in Atlanta, and now he's the chief down in Austin. So Adam Teal, who has been the chief of the department in several departments around the country. So that's the sign of a profession that now people are moving around. And
I think the other thing too, Doc, and if you look at it, is now you'll see fire chiefs who attain educational excellence and what do you call it,
achievement.
qualified achievement, and they move interdisciplinary. In other words, you'll see fire chiefs who are now city managers, or you'll see them moving into corporate America and taking over jobs as, you know, directors and CFOs and CEOs. And I think that's a real indicator of the fact that folks now realize that the fire service is as complex and nuanced a profession, and it is a profession as any other you know, corporate or safety oriented profession. So I think that's what Alan Black is a great example.
Yeah.
Alan was a great fire chief in Dallas, and then he went to the DFW airport, and he was a training guy, the chief, and now he's the director of public safety at the DFW airport, that is no small position. Huge,
yeah.
Massive.
And it's because the men and women who come up through the fire and emergency services and the police as well know how to deal with people. They know how to make decisions. They're not afraid to make decisions. Their attitude, and I know you had the same way, Bobby, if you had to make the call, you had 80% or 75% of the information and you made the call. And if you made a mistake, well, all right, I'll make another decision. It wasn't, you weren't crushed by the fact that maybe you made a mistake. You just picked up the pieces and you went for the next one.
And an associate of ours, Gary Klein from Ohio, Ohio State, Dayton, he defined the context as limited resources, limited information, high stakes,
limited time.
So that's the context, and which is radically different than, you know, a lot of corporate stuff where you have discretionary time and you can do, you know, all kinds of studies and weigh. But what's really interesting in Gary's studies and several other, Ensley, several other really good academics who've looked at it, what they found was that even in those industries where the people have the time to query experts and do surveys, it all comes down to kind of that gut thing that firefighters hone from day one, you know, because we don't have discretionary time and we do have to make that decision. And it's interesting, Talib, who I love, and I think he's one of the most amazing, I don't agree with him all the time, which is always fraught with probable disaster because he's very seldom wrong, but calls it skin in the game. You know, when a firefighter makes a decision, and whether, especially in regards to safety and risk, we've got skin in the game. It's not some abstract decision about, you know, how some gyro might operate in some plane we may never be in, you know, or even if you're an engineer from Morton Thiokol and you're working on, you know, rocket boosters, you know, the engineer is interested. The astronauts, they've got skin in the game.
They're invested.
Right. Yeah. Same as the firefighters. And I think that's an interesting aspect. And it's an interesting aspect if you think for the last, you know, and I think that obviously what you did at the National Fire Academy was huge. And I think like a lot of other innovations, if you will, and breakthroughs, that the timing was perfect, right? We had the internet, we had, you know, better communications, travel was never easier. And you had other players besides yourself. That Alan was keenly interested, you know, Ray Picard was keenly interested, Ronnie Coleman was keenly interested. There was a cachet of men and women who weren't afraid to talk about philosophy, who weren't afraid to talk about physics, who weren't afraid to talk about energy, you know, in broad sense, not just, well, you got to get ladders to all three sides of the building. Yeah, you do, you know, but understanding that building, and we're seeing it today. You know, we're seeing the struggle now with dealing with testing for buildings, which is so antiquated. they're still doing the Steiner test. They're still doing ASTME 119, which, for goodness sakes, it was developed in the 1940s. So it's a 60-year-old test. So we're still having that struggle with some of our industry partners to catch up to where we are.
Yeah.
We're
What we're dealing with.
Yeah, we're fighting now with these people to say, wait a minute,
Yeah.
which I think that's a no small measure to people like you, Glenn Corbett, many, many others. I hate to bring up another Jersey name, for the love of God, but there you have it.
Yeah.
But we are, and you look at the schools, whether it's John Jay or Oklahoma State or Maryland, or Texas A&M. I mean, the fire schools in the nation today are, and you look at as you said, 700 variations on the degrees within our own industry. And now I think that the medical community, especially now, we're seeing how the fire service has become so integrated in the fabric of the community in real-time medicine, right? Obviously not clinical medicine, but at least in the basic life-sustaining emergency medicine and such. That's huge. And I look at these young medics today, and I'm just awed by their skills and their dexterity and their deftness. They're just, it's like watching poetry in motion when these men and women, are operating. Not that we weren't elegant on the fire ground, but these people are something else. I mean,
It's training, learning new knowledge.
So,
and
I like that. Now, let's go a little. Who am I trying to channel here? Ray Kurzweil. Let's go a little Kurzweil here, and be futurists for a moment.
Okay.
Opportunities. I mean, people call them challenges. They're not challenges. Anything you think is a challenge, you're just looking at it wrong.
Yeah.
If there's a problem out there, solve it. Make it yours. I mean, what do you think the fire service should be trying to jump into, trying to, just wrap our heads around more broadly?
Yeah, very broadly, I think the major area of growth, there's two major areas of growth: emergency medical services and community risk reduction. And I think that, what we're looking at right now with the fires out west is just horrendous. But at the same time, we're watching the fires on the west, we're watching the Gulf Coast hit another storm, and the flooding coming in up in Mobile, Alabama, and Alabama area. And the fire department has the opportunity to serve its community by identifying and mitigating or preventing, however you want to capture that risk to citizens. And it's a growth industry, because whether you agree with or disagree with climate change, the crises are getting more and more and more. You take a look at the weather today, it's 5 storms in the in the Atlantic coming across, one right after the other. They're running out of names. They have to go to the Greek alphabet to start naming these hurricanes.
I think an interesting way to look at it, though, and to be more broad from a historical standpoint, because there was a 200-year drought in California that we know happened. 200-year drought, which is, they talk about droughts today. Go 200 years and see what kind of fire we got. So, yeah. But what I think, if you want to look at it to try to take the politics out of it, is that the world's access is unstable. B, if there were 5 hurricanes 300 years ago, 400 years ago, there was nothing to destroy. Right. So the recording of them or the note of them was irrelevant. Plus the hurricane administration is only 60 years old. So, its collective historical database is this compared to, the arguably 300,000 years that the planet's been pretty much the way it is right now. And so you go back to the mini ice age and all those other incredible things that have happened. But what people have to understand, though, is you're living in the moment. So irrespective of what's causing it, it's the potential for catastrophe. And how do we not only mitigate, but how do we build more resilient, how do we engineer more resilient communities? And I think we can be a huge part of that, because as you and I know, the faster you can get help to people, the faster you can restore them to some sense of normalcy. The longer you leave people unprotected, unsupplied, the greater that chaotic environment expands into every other aspect of their lives. So, and the whole climate thing. I've got so many friends that bombard me with stuff about that all the time.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. I don't care.
Right.
That's not my problem. And quite frankly, the greatest wisdom I ever heard came from a friend of mine who said, Mother Nature's going to pick her time, she's going to pick her place, and she's going to kick your ass. And that's just it, But resilience engineering is something we can talk about. And I think when we look at these wildfires in California, that in no small part, this New York Times writer did a great piece on it. A Revolver writer also did a great piece on it the other day that I was speaking to. The engineering there was awful. Leaving dead and down on the ground is just unconscionable. And all of it done with the best of intention. People thought that we'd tried habitat, we'd tried forest. No, it's fuel.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, and to my point about the drought, if this was 400 years ago, we wouldn't care. The big burn in 1910. I mean, was
started the Park Service.
Yeah, well, and actually
the Forest Service
before, and Gifford Pinochet on the foundation of the Forest Service, crazy Yale guy, friend of Teddy's, said America will never suffer another wildfire. Like 3 years later was the big burn. So, way to go, Gifford. But anyway, shows you what a Yale education will get you. So anyway, I had to throw that in. I went to Harvard on the Rio Grande.
Is that right? Yeah.
Oh, UNM, Harvard on the Rio Grande. I got the in. So, but to the point, today we do care because there's people there.
Yeah.
And back to our point, our industry exists to protect their dignity and their lives, and which are intertwined. And I think that for me, we can argue all day long about coal and all that other good stuff. God bless you. Knock yourself out. The numbers are what numbers are. You want to see a guy who does really good math? Google Niall Ferguson. There's an empiricist mathematician who created the imperial model for the coronavirus that said 200 million Americans would be dead right now. So there you go. That's pure math. But that's what pure math does. So models only tell you what's true for the model, not what's true with innovation
empirically
and everything else that's going to happen. So, the population bomb, who was the guy who did that back in the 90s? And Britain would cease to be a country and there'd be worldwide famine. Well, no, famine's pretty much been eradicated pre-corona. Now it's kind of coming back because of the disruption in the supply chain. But pre-corona, we pretty much eliminated famine, and which is amazing in our lifetimes, which is amazing. But it's because we can yield so much more food per acre than ever before. And they hadn't anticipated that because, as Yogi Berra said, it's hard to predict, especially the future. So, but as we talk about the future, I like that. I think EMS and community risk reduction, and I think we're well on our way in EMS. I really do. Where I think we're still trying to wrap our hands around is community risk reduction. And I think that resiliency is such a big part of that. And how do we help make sure that our communities can withstand hurricanes, floods, fires? How do we make our case to the public that it's worth investing in fire breaks, that it's worth investing in light timber operations to clear dead and down and thin the forest, that it's worth investing in better levees and moving at some point in time
in communities out of the danger zone.
Right. New York City may at some point in time, as the world continues to spin, not become viable, not unless you want to build a Venice situation and try to have a wall of water splashing around you, and maybe the technology will be there by then. I don't know, but it's just like New Orleans. If you build a city in a bowl, expect it to fill up from time to time.
Yeah.
And so I think that's a great point. I like that. I like EMS and community risk reduction. I think you're right. I really do.
The city managers, the citizenry are looking to have communities that are resilient, that deal with these issues. And my concern is that someone with less experience, less ability to get along with people outside the fire service is going to take advantage of doing that kind of a thing in a community because perhaps the fire service never got out of the cave to look and see what's going on outside. They've got to get out a little bit and say, okay, what are the risks in my community? If you're in Florida, it's hurricanes and flooding. If you're in Oregon, it's wildland fires and snow. I don't, every community has different risks, but find out what they are. Do what it is you need to do to educate the public, to encourage the public, identify, correct, and sustain.
I also think that's one of the reasons why the fire service has been so successful, because by and large, we're parochial, we're local.
Yeah.
And it's one of the reasons why I think the NFPA has done a good job. I really do. I think people throw a lot of stones at the NFPA, and yeah, they've had their ups and their downs and, their foibles like the rest of us. But by and large, the authority having jurisdiction can take any one of their standards and modify
and apply it.
Yeah, make them fit where they are, right?
Here you go. Here's a tool that you can use in your community. Twist it, tweak it, whatever you have to do, make it work. Make it work.
Yeah.
And
I remember I was with Pete Gansey one time and we were talking, and he said, I'm a good firefighter in New York City, but don't expect me to be a good fire in Des Moines. You know what I mean? Because I don't know the lay of the land there. I don't know you put me in a silo fire and
he's lost.
I'm lost. Yeah, right. And you take a kid from a farming community, a rural community, who's a great firefighter there. You put him in downtown Manhattan. He looks at he'll look at an H building and he'll wonder what he's looking at. So and that's okay. You know what I mean? I think that's okay. That's why we have the Air Force, the Navy, the Marines, the Army. Everybody has their domain. Now we have the Space Force, which I think is fantastic. That's like when I got to say this to you because you'll agree with me. I think one of the most underrated accomplishments of our lifetimes, me and you, and I think it has to do with the fact that we've lost our capacity for awe in many ways. When Elon Musk landed that rocket booster vertical,
on a platform,
on a floating in the water, landed it vertical. To you and I, it was 2 words: Buck Rogers. Because every rocket we had ever seen in every sci-fi Twilight Zone, Buck Rogers, Fireball XL5, all did the and Elon Musk did it for real.
Amazing.
Amazing.
How he's revolutionized the motor industry.
Oh, the motor industry, the space industry. His capsule, if you think about risk and risk management, that unmanned capsule that they've been using 8 weeks ago, took 2 men, Bob and Doug.
I love the space station.
Because remember the Bob and Doug comedy team when you were kids? Bob and Doug went to the moon and came back in a private rocket.
Yeah.
And in a few weeks, 4 people are going. And now they have their sights on Mars. And now they found phosgene gas in the atmosphere of Venus.
Yeah.
It just keeps Seneca said it best, our children will be amazed, our descendants will be amazed at the things that are so plain to them that we don't know. They'll be just, how did they not know this? Which kind of makes me, as we look at what's going on today with this presentism, where people are holding historical figures to the mores of the day, they didn't know, you can't hold people accountable for the things they didn't know. Like tearing down a statue of Columbus is almost an exercise in arrogance, because Columbus had no idea what his coming here was going to do. Quite frankly, he was looking for India. He bumped into America. You know what I mean? It was a total accident. And so, but to take away the bravery that it took to climb on a wooden ship in the 1400s and just sail out. Okay.
When most of them thought the world was flat.
Or we were sitting on the back of a turtle. And off you go. So I think that I hope we don't fall into that trap that I see a lot of this nihilism and presentism, and I really worry about that. I worry about the suppression of thought and language, and I see it creeping into the fire service, Doc. I see, and God bless Twitter; it's a great platform. But just today, there was a Chinese scientist who came on, and she spoke about her belief, and she's a Chinese scientist, that the Chinese military intentionally created this virus.
I saw that. Yeah.
They suppressed it. That's wrong. Now, if you want to have the 403 protection that the government's given them to be a platform, then that's fine. If you want to be a publisher, you can censor all you want, but they're not supposed to be a publisher. They're supposed to be a platform. And that, what that woman said, that's important. People should investigate the claim. They should look into it. Not some 23-year-old kid from Brown University say, "Oh no, I don't like that." And no, that doesn't make sense to me. And I worry about that because I see firefighters not sharing, not expressing their deeply held beliefs because they're worried about the reaction of the mob.
Well, there's an obligation that you have as a public servant. I'm not sure that it's a concern about the mob, but it's the concern that they represent an organization, and it's very hard to separate yourself from the organization. It would be impossible for anyone to separate Bobby Halton from fire engineering. It can't be done.
But we are. In other words, my political and spiritual beliefs, I'm a devout Roman Catholic, very conservative, have nothing to do with how I feel about firefighting or
no,
fire service.
But you could do a lot of damage to fire engineering based on a personal philosophy that you may have or a belief that you may have. Now, I'm not saying Roman Catholicism would be the belief, but the belief that space aliens landed in Arizona someplace. If you said that, did they really? I missed that.
It was Roswell.
Roswell, New Mexico. Okay, when you were in New Mexico. Oh, okay. But you would do a lot
out there, Doc. The truth is out there.
But
that's another fascinating thing. I'll just say this point. I mean, it's interesting you should bring that up. I mean, now we have Navy tapes being released of pilots tracking objects that are moving in ways that they can't explain.
Well, they're Navy pilots, Bobby.
Hey, careful! Command. My son's still a command. He's still flying today. Matter of fact,
I know. God bless him.
Yeah, his bird is grounded because of the storms, and he had to drive his men out of harm's way. He was down.
Really?
He was down on the coast. So
he's flying 130s now.
He's out of Andrews. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't mind bragging a little on the lieutenant commander.
Oh, God bless him.
Waiting for his command to come up, and he's a good man. But I think it's interesting, and I worry. That's one of the things that I worry about, Doc, is that I think we need to find a way to allow people to express themselves without having that cancel culture. In other words, we're going to take away your job because maybe you do believe in aliens. Maybe you do have very liberal beliefs or very conservative beliefs, or you are very religious. I think Jefferson said it best. He said, "A man's religion, ideology, or politics is no reason for me not to be his friend." And he also said that he didn't care whether his friend had one god or 20 gods because it neither picked his pocket nor broke his leg. And I think that's really wise. In other words, you should be able to separate. If you're a good physician, I don't care if you're a Democrat or Republican. But I do have a package at the door from my UPS guy. Better see what that is.
Okay.
Stop it, dog. You're crazy. Oh, yeah, good. I'll get it later. Never mind, Doc. We live.
Okay.
And you see this?
I'm glad you weren't wearing your pajamas,
No, so I'm always cold. So these shirts always keep me warm, and I can open them up because I'm always cold. I'm always cold. And I'm in Oklahoma in the summer.
Yeah.
It's probably 90 today, and I'm freezing. So it's
just air conditioning on. Is that what it is?
No.
Oh well, I know the other stuff.
Yeah, it's a.
Yeah. Anyway, so getting back to what you were talking about.
I had a paper out as a kid.
But getting back to what you're talking about, I mean, there's also a doctor who said that the coronavirus is spread by devil's semen, and She was on the news. Yeah, I mean,
Well, that's a
where
little
is the line?
exaggerated. It's that she's the
You know,
one from Africa, and she was with
yeah.
a bunch of doctors practicing. She's a very religious lady,
Hmm.
um, but she actually has medical skills, and she's a real
Yeah.
practitioner.
Yeah. She's
It
licensed.
got convoluted. But what was interesting was that some of the other doctors who were much less controversial, who were there, some of them lost their jobs, which is totally reprehensible.
Mm.
That's reprehensible. Uh, a person should be allowed to have opinions that are not mainstream. Otherwise, we wouldn't be a country. What,
No, no, no. I
you
don't
know,
disagree, but there's a line that has to be decided. I don't know what it is, where you are being either detrimental to society because of the power or the authority that you exhibit, or the control of the message that you have. And again, I don't know where that is.
well, I think it's the old, it's okay except when you yell fire in a crowded theater and you could cause harm,
Yeah.
right? But to for someone to say that they have evidence that the Chinese may have manufactured this virus and released it, that's not causing harm. That's information. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
And
It
I
should
think,
be investigated.
and if someone believes in evolution or someone believes in creationism, I don't think that should jeopardize their jobs. If someone believes that hydroxychloroquine is a good treatment for COVID and someone disagrees, because there's doctors from Yale University, where the head of the Yale University epidemiology department, he believes that, which was the same thing the doctor you were just citing, you know, but it was her other beliefs that got her in trouble. I just think it's an interesting time that people's personal lives and their professional lives are being conjoined. You know what I mean? As if they're inseparable. And I think it's dangerous. I think the suppression of free speech is dangerous. And I worry about it because I'm seeing it in the fire service. And I think it's something we should be on guard about. Because I see people saying, well, I can't say that anything, I can't put a Trump sign in my yard because I'm a firefighter, and if somebody says that I could lose my job, I'm like, no,
No.
you've got every right to do that. Or I can't put a Biden sign in my yard,
Right.
or whoever you like. God bless you. But I mean, it's interesting, and I worry about that. I worry about people because you and I always get, well, you're so outspoken. I'm like, no, I'm not. As a matter of fact, if you want to know what I really think, you know,
Ask.
yeah, be careful what you ask for. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And I get paid to have an opinion, but I do temper it. And sometimes I wonder if I'm doing a poor job because I do temper it from time to time.
No, I think that you're expressing judgment, or exercising judgment, I should say, Bobby. And you're below your concern for free speech. More fundamental than that is your innate goodness. You're not wanting to hurt people. You're
No,
wanting only to help people. And that overrides anything else that you do. And I would say that your reticence to say things or express things is not based on fear or the lack of courage.
oh no, I have two pensions and a bad
Yeah,
attitude.
yeah, yeah.
What are you going to do? Take away my
And
birthday?
yeah, I always said this in FEMA. They would come down on me and say, "Look, what are you going to do? You're going to draft me, give me a rifle, and send me overseas to kill commies? Or are you going to put me in a burning building? Or are you going to send me a memo? Tell me what you're
I
going
got
to
all those
do."
T-shirts. What are you going to do? No, man.
No, no, it's your concern is just your innate goodness and your not fear, but you just don't want to hurt people.
Well, and it's so hard. I mean, I look at people having political debates on Twitter and I laugh. I'm like, okay, 140 characters is not a debate. I mean, I long for the old day. I would like to see like a Lincoln Douglas deal with Mr.
Yeah,
Biden.
hours.
Yeah, Joe Rogan, who's a radio personality. I've only heard one or two of his shows. Interesting young man. But I think he proposed to the two of them. He said, "I'll give you 4 hours," and I thought that would be priceless. I mean, I would listen to every minute of an unscripted 4 hour Lincoln Douglas debate,
Yeah.
where it's just the two of them. Okay, guys, the economy, go at each other,
I live in Gettysburg, and just a few blocks off where Lincoln gave his very famous address. But he was preceded by a senator whose name escapes me right now, who went on for 2 hours before Lincoln did. And of course, Lincoln came up and did his 272 words, which lives forever. But I often wonder, you see the pictures of that speech and that dedication of the cemetery down here. And I think of very inane things like, all these people standing around. Didn't anybody have to go to the bathroom? Didn't anybody, where did they go get a drink of water? There's no hot dog stands. There's no, you mean they would just stand there and listen for 4 hours?
Only a guy from Jersey would blurt out, with a PhD, mind you.
No some hot dog stands.
Where do you go to the bathroom? Oh God!
Oh.
You said that on a. I gotta edit that out. I know. Your whole legacy shot.
Well, like you said, I got a couple of pensions too and a healthcare plan. So.
But I think you're right, and I think so. There's always the difference between quantity and quality, and obviously Lincoln's words were immortal, and always will be. But Lincoln was a true orator. He had a way with words, whether it was that or the better angels of our nature, with malice towards none and charity towards all. I mean, those are great. And I can tell you exactly where he stole them from, because Lincoln was no fool. When Lincoln wanted to quote something, it was this.
The Bible.
He went, yeah. I mean, a lot of those are turns of phrase out of Proverbs, Ecclesiastes. He was wonderful at pulling scripture into language, and Kennedy as well was marvelous at it. Churchill. I mean, there have been people who commanded language. What did they say? I think Churchill said it about Kennedy. He said, or no, Kennedy said about Churchill is that he not only commanded language, he used it as a weapon.
Yeah, and he did.
And Churchill did. I mean, so I think you've got a great point there about restraint and speech. But I hope that people always feel that it's okay to say, even if they do believe in aliens, good for you. Someday, my good friend Pete Procilo gave me the opening of an editorial I did the other day on COVID, and it was, the virus has made fools of us all. And it has. Neil Ferguson, who did good math, he did pure math that turned out to be highly wrong, but he only knew what he knew, and
right.
or what he believed to be true. I think the same thing happens in many forecasting models, right? They put in what they believe to be. I think
man plans, God laughs.
Exactly, right. To quote John Lennon, life's what happens while you're busy making other plans, right?
Yeah.
So, but I think that I just worry that, especially with young firefighters, that they never feel that they can't question stuff, and right now, I've been questioning our incident command about the assumption of command function. And I think in metropolitan fire departments, it may be dysfunctional, or well-staffed fire departments, whether metropolitan or not, for the first dude to actually assume command. I think they should announce their arrival and give a kind of a description. Because think of your military days. If some young lieutenant said, "Hey, we're engaging the enemy, I'm assuming command here," some general back on the radio would have said, "No, you're not, son. I'm still in command. Tell me what you got and what you're doing." I think that we need to kind of, and in the day, Allen wrote in 1967 that anything that's been done for 20 years, we're probably doing wrong. And he wrote Fireground Command in 84. So,
right. So help me understand, Bobby. Let me give you another perspective on this and ask you a question. Why? That moment, when even you're talking about large departments where there's plenty of resources on the way.
Well,
obviously,
a small department where you have, say, 2 or 3 engines and a battalion chief.
Yeah. That officer is on a path toward higher rank and higher responsibility. Tell me why you don't view that as a small amount of responsibility.
I think
as part of training.
I think small unit leadership obviously needs to be cultivated and managed so that the person becomes able to extend that, right? and if you think about how McChrystal has done asymmetric warfare, if you've read his book, Team of
Mm.
Teams,
Mm.
fire service is really more of a team of teams. And what he did, McChrystal did in asymmetric warfare during the surge, was he allowed those teams to act much more independently than we are. So the idea, when someone says I'm in command, the other units in the Fireground model, which I helped Alan write the version in '84 and the subsequent revision and second revision, the model has people, engine one will do this, engine two, I want you to do that. As a team of teams, with a battalion chief, who's basically the remote command, if you will, central command, en route and monitoring it, the engine officer can roll up, or the truck officer can roll up and say, I've got a working fire in a 6-story commercial or residential, fires on the AD corner. I've got what we're going to be laying into the standpipe. We're going to be taking a 2.5. We're going to be laying an inch to a quarter. What are we going to be doing? Or I'm going to be placing my ladder at this position, whatever. I'm on scene, and then subsequent units can either do supportive communication, like engine one, ladder one. I got your transmission. We're do this, and then a battalion chief can say, hey, I confirm, engine one, I've got you on scene with a working engine two, because the idea there is that we know, we talked about this earlier, limited information, stress, competing goals, limited time to make those decisions. By all our best, Antonio Damasio, you pick the researcher, you can make 4 good decisions, 4 good critical decisions, and then you're pretty much done. So when you think about giving a good size up, spotting your apparatus, picking your command mode, interior or exterior, and
Initial action.
Control, you're pretty much done.
Right.
Now, the incident commander, if you will, by virtue of their position, naturally use those teams to help support them in their decision making, various inputs, other voices, to make decisions. So they're in a much better position. In other words, and as a battalion chief, or if you don't have battalion chiefs, the captain that's going to stay outside or whatever, you're not as invested with the skin in the game as the first arriver. So all I think I'm trying to do is lift some of the stress off that first arriver and put more fingers on the knife, so to speak, and help make better decision making, right? Collaborative decision making, a more supported decision. Because the second due engine could say, hey, engine one, copy that. Why don't you lay into the standpipe? I'll get the supply lines, or I'll get the attack lines. And then, that internal self-correction from a peer is much easier than some captain, chief officer saying, engine one, disregard that. That's a correction in real time in public. Whereas a peer can say, hey, Dennis, hang on a second. You lay into the standpipe, man. I'll get the attack lines off my engine, or I'll pull one off yours and one off mine, or however they want to do it. So I'm just saying, I think that because when you say you're in command, then you're taking responsibility for your units, subsequent arriving units. You're trying to predict the fire in real time. And I just don't think we have the cognitive bandwidth individually, from everything I've read and what I understand. And I think people like Woods and Decker, Ensley, Klein would back me up. And actually their writings do back me up. So, but it's a tough change, right? Because it's a tough evolution, because we've always done engine one, I'm assuming command. Well, we could change it to engine one, I've arrived and this is what I have, and I'm affecting it in this way. And I just think I think it would be a more pliable model.
Okay, so let me give you a couple of questions and see where we go with this thing, and I'll kind of use the Socratic method, Bobby. Who is going to be the coordinating person in charge? So who's going to do the 360? Who's going to decide whether it's in
that first arriver would still get the 360, because that's part of the size up. I mean, you gotta it has to be, the initial report's what you have. The subsequent report is the 360, and what you didn't know from what you couldn't see, right? You try to get that. Now, in some locations, like where we grew up, you may not be able to do that 360.
Right.
You may have to have another officer from the rear say, this is what you got in the rear.
Correct.
So that's more of my model. Like if you think about the way Jersey City and New York City fight fire, that's the model I'm really bringing even into the suburbs,
Mm.
because I'm just trying to think that I'm just saying from real world experience that after those first four decisions, everything else I hear is a mnemonic. Now, in a simulation lab, you can think more freely, but in a simulation lab, you really don't have any skin in the game. People don't die,
Right.
buildings don't really burn down, so that stress factor is not really there. But you put somebody in real time, and what I've seen, it plays out. What Damasio has said: four decisions, and then you need support. And so, and I just think that today we're so refined with our communications that we very rarely hear about people arguing about what to do. I mean, occasionally you do hear one of those offbeat stories, but
Mm.
they are so random and so rare that I really don't think there's an issue with people saying, I'm not going to do that. I mean,
Oh, no,
I,
no,
I don't hear that at all anymore. I mean,
no.
you know, and quite frankly, I've never heard it on the fire ground. I've heard reports of it, but I've never experienced
Never
it.
witnessed it.
Yeah, and I think that's usually when you have competing agencies with bad histories. You know what I mean? When
Yeah.
Bipperville rolls up and they don't like Bopperville,
It's interpersonal skills. It's not command and control.
bingo. It's got nothing to do with incident management. It's got everything to do with, you know, ego. And so, but I don't know. It's just something I think
Yeah.
for our service. I think it's time to, you know, we've got.
Throw some ideas out.
Yeah, my two things are: I think the incident command system needs to be reassessed. You know, especially for level 4 and 5 events.
Mhm.
And I think that it's also time to really take a hard look at technology and make sure that we're not getting out over our skis. Right? I think technology has been proven to be wonderful, but it can also invite other pathways for failure and disaster. The 737 MAX, for example.
Yeah. My
Great.
concern about the use of technology is if you study information theory and decision making, and I know you have, the maximum amount of bits of information that the human brain can hold in short-term memory is they call it the magic number 7 plus or minus 2. I know you've heard this, Bobby, but as a situation gets more stressed, you are able to hold fewer and fewer bits of information in your brain. So it's you get down to 3 and 4 and 5. So when we have a situation where you can monitor the cardiac output of every firefighter on the scene, my question is, okay, who's going to monitor every firefighter's heartbeat on the scene?
Years
And
years ago,
what are
Alan,
they going to do with that information?
right. In other words, information is great, but when you need actionable information, there's a great story, and the last one I'll tell, hopefully, about people.
No.
They were engineering a machine for the people that put you under, anesthesiologists.
Yeah.
And they came up with this machine that could do 47 different things. It could tell you the pulse rate, the blood pressure in your toes. It could tell you how long the person's hair was growing. Oh, you know, I'm just making stuff up, but it could do 47 things. The people who did anesthesiology hated it because they said there's 3 things we want to know. And that's how we keep people alive. The rest of the stuff is great, but it's getting in the way.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And to your point, when someone's under, they want to know what was their O2 sat, what was their whatever and whatever, you know. But I mean,
Yeah.
they could give a patootie about how fast your hair was growing. You know what I mean? And but so and it actually got in their way. So Alan and I argued for years that when we were talking about the command team, and we didn't argue, but we actually we agreed. We argued with his sons who disagreed with everything we said.
Yeah.
That
Their job.
so their job, yeah, to keep the old guys in check. We thought you should have an information officer, somebody who filtered that info. Okay, that's good. Are you going to tell the chief? No, he doesn't need to know that. I know it, and that's good. When he needs to know it, I'll let him know. You know, there should be, but that filter, when you think of the power of that filter, that's a big filter.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. You look at chiefs of staff in organizations, particularly government organizations and military.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. And even in the fire service, if you really want to get down to it, it would be the chief's secretary.
Right. The chief's aide. Yep.
If you want to know who's running the fire department, find out the man or woman who's been the chief's personal secretary for the last 20 years.
Right.
Because for that 20 years, there were 5 fire chiefs.
Right.
There was 1 secretary.
Right.
And that person can tell you where the bodies are hidden and who's got the line.
That's right.
You know?
And every organization has one.
Yep.
They all do.
It's like my son said, when he got on a ship, you find the master chief, you find out what he drinks, and you find the bottle, and then you shut up, you know?
Yep.
And
This is what I need, Chief. Yep.
My youngest, the Army, he had the Rangers. He was out there out doing drill, and he had a bunch of sergeants and master chiefs, and he was giving the command and giving a talk. And one of the older fellows walked up to him and said, "Son, when you talk to us, you take the bass out, because you know how you go bass when you're trying to be authoritative, you know." And my son turned around and said, "Thank you, Sergeant. I'll do that right. You got it. Appreciate that. Okay, fellas." Yeah. So, anyway,
That's great.
Hey, listen, Doc. I've gone way over time, but I just love you so much, and I couldn't resist
It's great seeing you.
talking to you.
I got to get out to FDIC. I hope things work out this year.
I'm fully confident they will. I think that never underestimate the power, the courage, and resolve of America when her back's against the wall.
Yeah.
James D. Hornfisher, and our backs against the wall. And I think our medical people, our corporate people, God bless them, that warp speed program, I think they're going to do a modern day Manhattan Project.
Oh, I hope so. I hope so for all of our sakes. Yep.
And I think that I just think that there's an indomitable spirit in this country, and it's been asleep for a while, and I think that it's coming back. You know, there's an old biblical verse that hard times create strong men create good times create weak men, and weak men create hard times. So we're going through some hard times.
Yeah.
But it's creating really strong, and again, men collectively for humanity.
Sure.
It's making hard people strong people, and we're hearing more and more intelligent, coherent, elegant voices coming forward, and I think that's a good thing.
It is. And I'm looking forward to hopefully seeing you in Indy. You find something for me to do. Sweep the floors or sing or something. I don't know. And we'll get out and
tell stories about the Jersey Turnpike. You've got more offbeat Paul Harvey-ish type jokes than anybody else I know.
We'll do it.
You told a brilliant one recently. Oh, the dentist story. That was the best. You cracked a tooth, remember?
Yeah, eating a bagel. And I had you going there, Bobby, you know.
I stole that one as fast as I could.
Good for you. I'm glad.
Yeah. When you hear a good joke like that, there's nothing like a good Irish story joke, you know? Because
it's the only thing we have.
You think, you're sitting there thinking this, really happened to the guy, you know? And then it's a joke. But it's so funny when you tell a joke like that, so many people don't know you were kidding. You know, they look at you like,
I know. Really? Yeah. Yeah.
The guy was really in your class? No, it's just a joke. Oh, God. I told a joke one time about blessing myself on an airplane, and some fella asking me if I thought it was true. I heard it from Joel Osteen, and it goes back and forth. The guy keeps asking about the Bible, and do you really believe about Noah? And finally the guy says, well, when you die, how do you know there's really, Noah? And I said, well, when I die, I'll ask him. He says, well, what if when you die, how'd the guy put it? It's a joke from Joel Osteen. He goes, when you die, how will you know? And the guy turns to him and says, well, if I die, I'll ask him, and then he goes, and then you'll know it. I mean, the guy will be in hell, you know? It was like a funny joke. And so, but I told it somewhere, and I said, and I was giving a speech, and I said, and it was Mayor Bartlett, who was the mayor of Tulsa at the time. I was going to talk to all the Tulsa cops and firemen. They roared laughing. And I sit back down, and a lady who's a news anchor turns to me.
Oh, no. Really? She believed it.
Turned to me and says, "You what? When were you on the plane with Dewey?" And I'm like, "That was a joke."
Yeah.
And she's like looking at me like, "Oh, really?" I'm like, "Yeah, that's a joke." And everybody at the table is just trying to like eat their salad, you know.
Say, Bobby, just so I know, because I know you get around, you give a lot of speeches. Did you steal my gas station joke too?
No, I have not stolen that one yet, but I will.
Okay. All right, good.
I will. Well, Kennedy said it best. In order to be quoted, quote. If you want to be quoted, quote.
Okay.
So whenever I steal a good joke, and come on, we're Irish, so you didn't write them.
It's a story.
It's a story. They're all great stories. But I love you. I want to say thank you for doing this, first of
Oh,
all.
great, Bobby. It's fun seeing you.
Thank you for being my friend and my confidant, and thank you what you've done for your community and your nation and your family. You've been one of the good guys for a long time, and just a really great example of, you know, anybody can be the president, but it takes a really good guy to be a firefighter.
Lucky Trucky. Yep.
Like, yeah, I never knew you never put out a fire.
It's true. I mean, on vacation or transfers,
you died first. I'm throwing that in your eulogy.
You got it.
I love you, Doc.
Never put out a fire. All right, brother. Be good.
Bye now.
Bye-bye.